A lot of optimism down in Auburn, Alabama as Gene Chiswick enters his second year, 8-5 last year. Cam Newton, the Florida transfer, is slated to start at quarterback. Gus Malzahn will use him. 3 school records, including points scored for the first-year offensive coordinator. Running back, they got a stable of Mario Fannin, the big back, but look out for Ontario McCaleb, the sophomore, and the true freshman Michael Dyer. Wide receivers Darvin Adam and Terrell Zachary are going to be protected by the offensive line Lee Zemba and Ryan Pugh.
Yeah, they boast the best tackle in the SEC in Lee Zemba. He's a tremendous player. It's going to be an NFL tackle, an NFL player one day, and be a great one at that. And also, I need 2 big playmakers to step up, 2 newcomers actually to step up. You look at Cameron Newton, the quarterback, and you also look at running back Michael Dyer, tremendous player, 5'8", 205, a solid running back coming out of high school, so he's going to be expected to step up big. Newton is also going to be asked to step up huge, especially in that spread offense.
And the defense is a problem last year. Defensive coordinator Ted Roof needs to put it together. 27.5 points per game last in the SEC. They gave up a bunch, 218 yards through the air, 268 first downs allowed, and the last 3 years they haven't given up less than 179 rush yards per game on defense. Josh Bynes, the linebacker, Mike Blanc, the defensive tackle, really need to stop the run, and cornerback Nico Thorpe and free safety Zach Etheridge need to man the secondary.
Yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic about that secondary because a lot of them are coming back from injury. So it'll be interesting to watch that secondary play this year. Linebackers are solid, but they're thin, a lack of depth. So expect to see a lot of freshmen, true freshmen come in and play right away in that linebacking core. And you also look at the DNs, Mike Gogans and Carter looks to provide more pressure up front, but you also want to keep an eye on redshirt freshman Nos Ugay, the guy that's big pressure, big DN coming out of high school, and they expecting big things out of him up front.
LSU coming off a 9-4 year, not bad, but they dominate the lesser opponents. They're 33-4 versus unranked opponents compared to 18-11 versus ranked. They need to get bigger wins under Les Miles. Kind of an underachieving year. He's entering his 6th year. Jordan Jefferson, they will stick with at quarterback. Only less than 25 points per game. That's 78th in the nation. Stephen Ridley at running back. Wide receiver Ruben Randall, now a sophomore, and Terrence Tolliver. And look out for athlete Russell Shepard to get some play at wide receiver. Left tackle Joseph Barksdale leads 2 returning starters back to the offensive line.
Yeah, they have a lot of questions on that offensive line, especially at right tackle, I'm going to say. But Jordan Jefferson's improvement is key to that offense. He holds the ball a little bit too long. That's why they gave up a lot of sacks last season, because him holding the football, case in point, see that Outback Bowl against Penn State, holding the ball way too long. So if he can improve his quarterback play, that offense is going to look a lot better, because I love their running backs. A lot of talented players. Keep an eye on Murphy as well, too. A guy, if he can shake the injury bug, provides a lot of shiftiness, reminds me a lot of Ricky Waters. So, but really is going to be solid. And their wide receivers are talented, but they need the quarterback play to compensate those wide receivers.
An uncharacteristic year, second to last in the SEC with only 129 rush yards per game. Usually the Tigers, the Bayou Bengals, love to run the rock, especially at home. On defense, 133 rush yards per game they were giving up. That's a 36 yard per game jump since 2006. So back in their heyday when they were really playing well, they would hold their opponents to under 100 yards per game. Kelvin Shepard, the linebacker, leading tackler, is back. 7.5 tackles for loss, 110 total tackles. Patrick Peterson, one of the shutdown cornerbacks in the country, 2 interceptions last year. And free safety Jai Eugene will battle redshirt freshman Craig Lawson for the starting job.
Yeah, keep an eye on Lawson. Lawson is going to be a star. He has the look of another NFL safety coming out of LSU. He's a tremendous player. I'm interested to see him play this year. That D-line has to be more aggressive to stop the run, because you can't run on – it's tough to see teams run on LSU. So you have to be more aggressive up front, especially redshirt defensive end. You look at Sam Montgomery, a guy that should help out improve that pass rush. So that's one thing to watch defensively for LSU. And the linebackers are young, but they're athletic. You mentioned Kelvin Shepard. You know, he's a senior veteran, but they need some more talent at their linebacker spot. They're athletic enough, but they aren't real stout against the run.
Ole Miss coming off a 9-4 year. They defeated Oklahoma State in the Cotton Bowl. Expectations are down compared to last year. There was a lot of promise there. Houston Nutt entering his 3rd year. Quarterback Nate Stalin would take over for Jevin Sneed. Running back Brandon Bolden's a bigger back, taking over for Dexter McCluster, who really got a lot of carries in the second half of the year. Patrick Patterson, a sophomore, needs to step up at wide receiver to go along with Markeith Summers. And they got 2 good tackles in Bobby Massey and Brad Sowell.
Well, you look at Enrique Scott and Ridley, Brandon Bolden to carry that offense. They're going to have to rely on that running game heavily. And can Nathan Stanley eliminate the mistakes that plagued Snead last season with throwing interceptions? So he has to avoid the mistakes. And they have an extremely young on offense, especially on that offensive line. The offensive line is really young. If they can gel quickly, then the offense looks to take bigger strides than they did last season.
And at defensive corner, they have one of the best minds in college football. That's Tyrone Nix. But they really need to improve this year on the 140 yards per game they gave up last year. Nose tackle Gerald Poe is back to go along with defensive end Kentrell Lockett, John Cornell, linebacker. Secondary, they have Charles Sawyer and 2 new cornerbacks, him and Jeremy McGee. So they really need to make strides on the defensive side.
Well, the depth of the secondary is extremely light, so expect the cornerbacks. They're going to have to play huge. If they get hurt, they're going to struggle because you have lack of depth. The lack of depth behind them is glowing on that defense. And also, defensive line is veteran D line will prove to be a plus, especially with Poe. You mentioned the guy that's all SEC, and Jonathan Cornell. He looks to have a breakout senior year, so they're going to need these guys to come in and play tremendous, especially at every level of defense. But I'm worried about that secondary, especially the lack of depth behind those guys.
Mississippi State showed some progression last year. Dan Mullen, his second year in Starkville. Chris Ralph will battle redshirt freshman Tyler Russell for the starting quarterback job. They need to replace a big back in Anthony Dixon. Wide receiver Chad Bumphus really had a great freshman year, is now moving into his sophomore season. And left tackle Derek Sherrod, second team All-SEC, returns with 4 others. They had 228 yards per game on the ground. They let up 20 sacks. They averaged almost 5 yards per carry. So this O-line is a bright spot.
Yeah, the O-line, contrary to popular belief, a lot of people don't like their offensive line. I love their offensive line. And Derek Sherrod is a beast at left tackle, so he's going to be a future NFL player down the line. Also, you look at Chris Rolfe. He has to make huge strides this year in order for that offense to be successful, because I have full confidence in Mississippi State to be able to run the football, but it all depends on whether or not they'll be able to operate off play action. Rolfe has to do huge things in the passing game, and the wide receivers are a weak spot on that team, so expect to see a lot of true freshmen, or a lot of freshmen, redshirt freshmen in general, to come and play and help provide that spark.
The defense had their issues last year. They gave up almost 27 points per game, the most since 2003. The good thing is they have a great pass rusher in Pernell McPhee back. He's a second-team All-SEC player. Linebackers K.J. Wright and Chris Wright are back. Free safety Jonathan Banks, 4 interceptions, 2 to the house. Strong safety Charles Mitchell. They really need to get this side of the ball solid to go along with that great rush offense.
Well, it goes hand in hand with the front 4, and they have a lot of beef up front. Let me read something to you right quick. You have James Carman at 6'7", 345, beef. You also have Fletcher Cox, 6'4", 300 pounds, beef, 2D tackles. They're going to stop the run this year a lot in Starkville. Also, the linebacker should improve with the help of that front 4. So as the front 4 improves, you'll see everything behind it improve a lot as well, too. In the secondary, they have to make huge strides, especially want to keep an eye on Broomfield and Langston, those 2 guys back there, 2 leaders back in the secondary. So watch Mississippi State look vastly improved than the last couple of years. So I'm impressed with Mississippi State. I expect to see a lot of big things on those guys this year.